Welcome to Disambiguation. I'm your host, Michael Fauscette. Each week, we interview experts in artificial intelligence, generative AI, and business automation to help business leaders understand how to use these tools for the biggest business impact. In our show today, we're going to take a look at AI and Deltek and really try to understand how Deltek is using AI to help project management, project-based companies really drive more competitive advantage and automate a lot of their business. So, Warren, welcome back, and I'm really glad to talk to you again. And I should probably say, if you've been watching the show for a while, you'll recognize Warren because he did an episode last year while I was at ProjectCon, and we talked about a lot of this. So I'm anxious to see all of the progress that you guys have made in a year.
Yeah, great, Mike. Thanks for having me. Just to remind everybody, I'm from Deltek. I run the product team. So, all the, global decisions we make about the future directions of our projects for our products for project-based businesses kind of fall on my shoulders, as well as my partner in crime, Dinakar Hitzavali, who's our CTO. So glad to be back. Love your show. Listen to your episodes all the time. So glad to be a part of it.
Hey, what'd you think of the new intro? I just did that, so I was kind of excited about it.
It was beautiful. So did AI generate that for you? Did you train a model with your
No,
voice?
I actually did that on my own. That's an unusual thing these days, but I did actually build it myself. Of course, I use Canvas, so that's probably cheating. I should probably get a little agent representation of that and get paid for when I say those things. Anyway,
exactly.
So I know, I took a look at the keynote. I unfortunately wasn't able to go to ProjectCon this year, but I did see what I would say is a lot of progress in what we talked about last year. So I want to jump right into that. And I know last year you had announced DELA and, as an AI assistant, and then it seems like that's evolved quite a bit over the last year into maybe more than just an assistant, although it is certainly that as well. So can you tell us more about kind of where you've gone with this, what the capabilities are, and how the businesses how your customers can benefit from it?
Sure. So for us, DELA is really kind of the brand umbrella for Deltek's AI strategy. And so it doesn't take a lot of thought to think about how we came up with that. Deltek and AI, you have DELA. One of the capabilities certainly is the digital assistant, and I'm sure we'll get into talking more about that. But DELA has a lot of key capabilities. So some of that is what we call smart summaries. In other words, getting curated content out of structured content that we have in a lot of our project-based solutions. Intelligent, search and retrieval. So you think about, projects have a lot of information, whether that's a new bid or an existing project, and really going through that information and providing meaningful insights and analysis, but just pulling out information, right? If you have a big proposal from the federal government, being able to get access to all the requirements pretty quickly, that's a great job for generative AI tools and for DELA. Simple task automation, right? And we'll talk about some of these things. There's a lot of simple tasks that are mundane that DELA can take off the hands of end users so they can focus on more meaningful tasks. And then we get into some of the more interesting use cases that are more emerging, things like anomaly detection, especially at scale. When you think about a manager that might have to look over 100 expense reports, how much are they really reviewing versus how much can AI assist with that? And then analysis and insights, right? So looking at data and patterns of data and really helping people pull out some of the key insights and doing some of that analysis for somebody that might have to spend hours and hours poring over data can be done very, very quickly. And then we get into the realm of kind of full-blown agents or assistants that can take end-to-end processes and manage them on a sliding scale of control between, the AI agents like DELA and the end users.
Interesting. So it sounds like it has evolved quite a bit.
Yeah, without a doubt. And we continue to kind of add real capabilities. I think our mantra has always been purposeful innovation. So we want to, merge technology, our knowledge of projects in a way that's adding value to the end customer. And so a lot of these capabilities exist today, and we're continuing to build off of them. We've had like you said, a really productive year, and going from, I think at ProjectCon a year ago, we launched one smart summary, which was for federal agency profiles to give somebody a 2-page brief on what a federal agency is up to. and we've expanded, to all the things I just mentioned, across a number of different products, in the Deltek portfolio. So we've been busy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, last year I know just the announcement of the summaries, and I heard a lot of feedback from customers. They were pretty excited about it because, as we know, there's just tons of data, and a project is, metrics driven if you're going to be successful. So being able to have a conversation with your data and understand all the things around that, and then later take that automation, and we'll talk about that some, I know, but there's a lot of opportunity, and I was excited last year when we even just talked about the preview of some of the things that you could do. And it sounds like those use cases have expanded quite a bit across the whole set of Deltek products.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, and just take the smart summaries for example. We went from like having one, to show. Now we've got about a dozen, and then we have, and those are very curated, right? So when you think about like a project summary, smart summary, you want to know, what is this particular project? What's going on in it? Who's working on it? You want to know things like how much have we billed? What are the days sales outstanding for our customer? Are they paying their bills on time? Some of these key KPIs that drive the health of the overall project itself. And so, there's a very curated set of things that you want somebody to have if you're going to hand them, or email them, a 1 or 2 pager to get them up to speed on the project. And so super useful if I'm going to go talk to my client, to know what the state of affairs are, if I'm going to do some executive bridging or just check up on them, or maybe I want to, bring the hammer down on my project manager if my days sales outstanding are more than 45 days and that's impacting cash flow on the project. So we've expanded quite a bit there, as well as some of these other things. I think the launch of the DELA Intelligent Business Companion, which is our spin on Digital Assistant, has been really interesting, right? So this is not just, something where you can have a quick chat with the ERP. It also incorporates automation as well as some UI components, integration with conversational UIs. And so the idea here is that, we're giving every employee in a business this digital companion that can go do work for them, can go run queries for them, they can ask questions of the data, they can do analysis, they can do simple things like, hey, put these 3 hours on my timesheet for this project, and it'll go execute that for them. So lots of really interesting things that DELA has expanded into since the last time we spoke, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I as you know, I started my career in tech as a project manager, and just the idea that I could automate and collect that data for, weekly status reports and reporting up the chain to my boss and his boss and the CFO, and all those things were a lot of work, and certainly takes away from the actual effort of doing the project, executing the project. So I think that's excellent, and then taking that further, one of the things that I always hated was things like approvals and reviewing things and looking at timesheets and expenses and all those things. So, the more you can automate around that and make that simpler, and even put that in something that I'm used to using, like Slack or Teams or something like that. I think that's really a big benefit to the people on the ground, which is the first place you want to start, I guess, when you're thinking of project-based business, right?
Yeah, for a project-based business, I mean, it's all about discrete work. And so what that really comes down to, how can I discreetly go find and win that new business? How can I discreetly then go track all the costs, labor and expenses on the business, and then, put out bills that the customer can trust and they're going to pay. And so there's a lot of, as you said, tedious tasks that go into that. And the more that we can have or lean on AI to do those things, in places where these people work, a lot of times, especially in small business, people are wearing multiple hats. They're billing, but they're also doing these things. Like you said, they're reviewing expense reports, they're reviewing timesheets, but they got to go find new business and then bill out to the customer as well. So the more we can take away from that kind of front, mid, and back office and have AI do some of that for them, the more they can spend on billable time, on working with their customers, on delivering on their actual projects. And so, we see this kind of convergence, like when innovation happens, when technology is mature to the point where you can have true innovation. And we see that with DELA, in that, we're integrating DELA not only, across, our project ERPs, but also in conversational UIs like Teams, as you just mentioned, and then with technologies like Microsoft Adaptive Cards. So we can allow for, DELA to serve up a time card in a Teams interface for somebody to do a quick, time entry or quick approval, and never have to leave that conversational UI where they're doing most of the work on a day-to-day basis. Like, that's true innovation and automation. And it's going to take time out of that overall project lifecycle processing that somebody might do.
Yeah, yeah. I think as a, as a project manager or as a program manager or somebody even, up the chain, just having the capability to work inside of whether it's Teams or Slack or whatever, whatever your tool of choice is, that is so much easier than having to go out to different systems and do very specific things. So that, to me, that seems like that would be a huge time saver. Now, interestingly, this year, the data about AI adoption has been focused really around small and mid-sized business. And in fact, they're adopting AI at a much faster rate than the enterprise. And I mean, there's a lot of, you could argue, a lot of reasons why the enterprise is slower, because they have to test more and do more proof of concept, that sort of thing. But at the same time, I'm curious, because I know you have a lot of customers in that small to medium business area, and you sell a lot of products that really work for them. So and we talked about a little bit of those, like the approvals and that sort of thing, but what else are you embedding in those solutions that can really help resource constrained businesses be more productive and competitive?
Yeah, so obviously, freeing up their people to do more work, right? As in a small business, you're wearing multiple hats, and so anything you can save on the back end is going to help you out. But more, I think, more broadly, one of the capabilities that we've rolled out is the ability to do more intelligent search and match, right, for resource planning. So to be able to look not only kind of in your employee pool, but your candidate pool. If you need to onboard people, do you have the right skills? And I think for some of these small businesses, we can take that further in terms of like matching those skills against the actual contract requirements to say, are we putting the right skilled people on contracts, and how do we, provide some of that audit trail so they don't have to do that work, because the cost of compliance, especially in the government contracting small business community, can be high, right? And so, the capabilities that we've talked about already, are actually quite the same for small business as enterprise. And I think that the difference, as you so astutely pointed out, is that enterprise is a little bit more weary for a lot of different reasons, mainly because there's more transactions, more audit, that they have to make sure that everything is being done right. In a small business, there's less transactions, there's less people. And so I think people are a little bit more trusting of an AI agent to go do some things, because they can go verify it a little bit more easier. If I've only got, 50 invoices in a month, it's different than if I have 5,000 to go check to make sure that, the anomaly detection or the analysis was correct. And so I think that's part of it. You got to be able to see it in action, be able to audit it in action before you can then trust it in action. And so small businesses are going to be just quicker to get through that life cycle, if you will, than a more enterprise account. But everything we kind of talked about already is available, to the small businesses, and we really do see them starting to get more interested, adopt it more. They've got less users to go train. I think that's a big part of it, is as we think about, like, how do we enable everybody in the business to use these capabilities? There's less people in the small business to get on board. And oftentimes, they're run by an owner, an operator, a partner that can really drive that adoption from the top down a little bit easier than the enterprise customers can.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, the idea that I can do more with less is very attractive when you're talking about that resource constraint, and then, also some of the things that are difficult, like you mentioned, staffing and getting the right resources matched to the right product at the right time. I mean, that's a tough job in any business, and certainly in a project-based business, that's the core of your business. So it makes sense that would be a very attractive area for small business to take advantage of, right?
Yeah, and
I
it can really help them understand, just to take it a step, as you look at the pipeline, right? So, do we have the resources to go after this bid? Especially you look at a resource constraints industry like architecture, engineering, and construction, right? If I don't have them, do I have them in my candidate pool? So can I quickly hire them? What's my return time on hiring? So what's my requisition of revenue time? Can I get them on board fast enough to go bid on the next project? And so being able to help with all that, so they have more confidence in their systems, their data, and their capability, or they know where they need to work on capability. that's where we can provide some of this intelligent insight so that they can, actually figure out how they grow their business faster.
Yeah, that makes sense. I did a sponsored research project earlier this year that was focused on AEC, and that was throughout the entire process of really understanding their issues and kind of what they were trying to deal with and what they were using systems for. It almost always came back to they're very resource constrained and they're having a really hard time finding the right people, and anything you can do that helps with that part of the process and onboarding and making sure that that you're getting the right people in the right place is a huge value to them. So that really does make a lot of sense.
Yeah, without a doubt.
So if you think of the project life cycle, and you guys have you have tools that go across the whole life cycle, where along the way are you? Are there opportunities to use AI today? What you're doing, and then where you see this kind of moving over the next year or two?
Yeah, so we really see them kind of at all phases of the project life cycle. And so, for the audience, we really think about that at Deltek as, the ability to find and win new opportunities, the ability to, create great proposals, the ability to win, projects. And once you've won them, turn them into, a great project plan, right, for success. And then to deliver on those projects and to do all the things that you need to do as a project-based business to bill your customers, collect revenue, report financials, and so forth. And so, all along that continuum, there are opportunities for Gen AI to help out. So I'll give you kind of some specific examples where we're really putting kind of the smart search and retrieval to work. In a government contract, a solicitation can have several hundred pages of documents and amendments and attachments. And so you think about a human or many humans having to go consume that, distill it, understand, is this a fit for us? Is it not a fit for us? Do we have core competency? Can we partner with people in our network to go fulfill this? And then if they say the answer is yes, then they got to go create a proposal around that. And so one of the really specific use cases is using DELA to go do searching and retrieval on those documents. So I can take a solicitation and I can say, okay, well, what are the key requirements in this? And it'll list them out in a matrix that I can then go use in a proposal. I could say, well, what are the riskier requirements? And maybe it pulls out things, maybe it's a DoD contract and there's elements of the FAR that stipulate cybersecurity requirements that they may or may not have in the company and they need to think about. And then I can say, well, what are the key dates, right? That's key to understand, like, is this proposal due? Is there going to be, any kind of pre-meetings with the customer, any of these things that I need to be aware of so I can start planning around that in my procurement process. And so, that can be done in mere minutes, right? Versus something that used to take hours to do across many different people in the organization. And then the ability to kind of compare that and say, well, is this a good opportunity? Is this a fit for me based on my past performance? Coupled, that's insight that they wouldn't otherwise have. And we look at, all of the federal procurement data along with the company's past performance and their characteristics of what they have on their website and so forth to say, okay, is this a good fit or not? So that's a great example of where we're helping both small and enterprise customers understand not only fit, but understanding of the solicitation that's coming on. A lot of times, especially in a task order vehicle, there's a 21-day or a 7-day window to develop a proposal. So any second that we can take out of the understanding part of it, and put that into the quality of proposal, the quality of bid, they have a better chance of winning. And so that's one of the use cases where we see a big aid to what DELA can do for our customers. As we kind of move down, right, there's all kinds of use cases. We talked about some of them on the project management side, but you mentioned status reporting, right, being able to get that project summary, but things like variance reporting. So if I have a schedule variance, right, being able to report on that and to be able to build the narrative of why that variance is taking place. So somebody doesn't have to build it, or making it more accurate from what they originally had written. So being able to critique things like that. And then we get into the back office, and there's all kinds of things that are, things around doing analysis of my accounts payable, of my bills, of my outstanding kind of bill if I'm trying to close the month. What did I do last month versus this month? All these things, we can apply DELA to do that analysis for folks so they can spend more time on correcting things or more times on getting the books where they need them to be versus, doing that analysis up front. So it's just a few of the examples, but, I think we have more use cases than we can get out in a particular period of time, and so we've got a huge backlog of things that we're trying to weigh priority against and then get them kind of into DELA's capabilities.
Yeah, I mean, even the part you mentioned about helping understand what that opportunity is when you're in the early stages and how well it matches to what you have the capabilities to do. I mean, I've been involved in this for years, and consuming those RFIs, RFPs are hard, and then knowing how it matches, and then being able to go after the right business, not just any business. And I know in the past, a lot of companies have kind of shotgunned because they weren't sure what they might win, and so they're trying everything versus being really targeted, which I would assume has a much higher success rate for them, and also probably long-term success rate for them, because if you do the right projects, you're successful, and then you build that business and continue to develop it. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, and we're thinking about, we acquired a company called ProPricer. They do estimating and bidding. We have all kind of the mid and back office capabilities, and we've got IQ on the front that's doing that kind of search and to say, hey, this is a good fit for you or not. But using some of those other solutions in past history, we can then say, okay, to your point, is this going to be profitable for us? What does the cash flow look like for this? And is that going to really improve the business overall? Or is it going to hurt us because, we're bidding on a project that's not as profitable as the other things we could bid on? And as you know, business development resources are just as scarce as any other resource in the business. And so you got to point them at things that are not only give you the best chance of win, but the best chance of that long-term success.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it just the fact that you could understand the potential for profitability across different opportunities is a huge help in making the right decisions for your business. So that's good. You have a lot of GovCon customers, I know, and there's some special, things around them, reporting requirements and other things, right? And a few years ago, you bought GovWin, and I know that's been a big help with understanding what opportunities are available, and what business they should go after, what partners they should pick, that sort of thing. So how's DELA helping in the GovWin environment?
Yep. So we mentioned the smart summaries, right? So we've got federal agency profiles that you can provide smart summaries. We're starting to have that go to state and local. So you think about we're tracking close to 2,000, about 1,800 federal agencies that you can get a 1 to 2 page smart summary that tells you what that agency is all about, what are their current contract vehicles, who's doing business with them, all in really a snapshot. That helps in helping other people in the organization know who your customers are. But also, if you're thinking about going after a new agency, you'd like to know who the competition is, right? And so that helps in that arena. But then if you think about state and local, we're tracking about, between the U.S. and Canada, about 100,000 municipalities that have budget for state and local projects. And so the ability to go look at those and get a summary on those is pretty key, for companies, especially if you think about small businesses that often operate in 1, 2, or 3 state area, to understand, is there a county, a couple counties over that would be a good fit for us or not? It's hard to know that without doing a lot of legwork to figure that out. And so we can really help people understand that from their go-to-market. And then, an opportunity, right? So I mentioned smart search and retrieval. That's certainly part of it, to look inside and have a conversation with a document. But then, just to get a summary of that opportunity, so we can socialize that around in our business development process. Now, that's, I think, just the beginning, right? And what we're looking at now is we already have integrations between IQ and, say, Salesforce or our own CRM solutions and our project ERP, so that opportunities that somebody is tracking can flow to become a contract and so forth. The next frontier is to take that search and retrieval and then have it be a lot more meaningful, where we can take that and then use that to see the requirements and the WBS structure that you might have, the deliverable structure you'd have downstream in the product, so that we're eliminating dual entry, and GenAI is specifically suited to do that kind of mass data shredding and reorganization in a way that it can be consumed by structured applications downstream, be that for the ability to put together the pricing proposal, an actual proposal, or once you've won it, to turn that into a contract vehicle that eventually becomes a project that you're doing accounting on. And so that flow of information from the front office to the mid office to the back office is really one way in which DELA is helping out.
Mm. Well, so we hit on a couple of use cases around staffing or resource management, but I'd like to dig into that just a little bit more because that obviously is a big area for any project-based business. I mean, that's essentially the product, right? So very important. So what are the other interesting use cases? How are you seeing AI play out in HR, resource management, and staffing? And
Yep.
particularly around planning, for these use cases, how does that, doing and planning, how does that help?
Yeah, so there's a couple things where DELA can help. So one I mentioned, the ability to do kind of smart search and match, right? So if I have these characteristics for a role on a project, and then I have this candidate pool, that's made of my employees, and then the candidate pool from resumes that I might have in my candidate relationship management solution, DELA can help to match those together. Now, to take it a step further, right? How did those initial skills for that role on a project get formulated? Well, today, that's usually institutional knowledge. That's somebody doing the work on the proposal team or the project team and saying, okay, we're going to need 6 engineers, type 1 engineers. We're going to need, 3 architects. We're going to need X, Y, and Z. Well, DELA can help interpret that contract and say, these are the types of people you're going to need. These are the skill sets that are required. In federal procurements, oftentimes they're spelling out the educational level or some of the certifications they need to have. And so being able to extract that for the planner, the project planner, to say, okay, rather than them having to figure that out themselves, a suggested list of these are the skills and resources you might need. Or looking at a project that you've done before and say, you've done a similar project, this was the resource complement that's used to be successful. So this is the actual team build that you might need to go after filling out. And so I think there's use cases where DELA can help us to help that resource planner and that project manager to be a little bit more smart on the front end on how they're formulating the team, and then going out and finding the right people to fill it. On the back end, especially in the federal contracting world, they can get audited on that, right? So drawing a line between who worked on the project, how it was sourced, and how that matches back to the compliance stipulated in the contract. Like if you need somebody that has a PhD, in a certain field, then you want to be able to track that through. And so helping people with the compliance aspect of it is another way we can help out on the project side. And you mentioned scheduled. So we've been in the business of scheduled diagnostics and analytics for a long time. And right. So that the ability for us to bring more realism to somebody's schedule. We always kind of say that a good plan is a risk adjusted and vetted plan. And if you don't have a good plan before you start, then you're doomed to fail. And so being able to do simulations on a schedule, especially complex schedule, to understand kind of what is the critical path. Do you have too much logic in a particular area? Like if we say you have 10% or more of your effort in a particular area, you need to break that down to be more successful, to understand the different levels. And so being able to do that analysis on projects, not only large ones, but also small ones, is where DELA can help and be more, take the sophistication of everything we know about projects and how they get executed and put that in the hands of any user, whether they're very experienced or they're new at the job, so they have more realism in their schedule.
I mean, it really does elevate the way you can approach things and the output that you get for a lot of these different processes across the whole project, really. Which I assume, especially in a small or mid business where they don't have all of the resources they probably need, that is a huge advantage.
Yeah, without a doubt. And we mentioned you kind of hit on something that I wanted to mention. So, like, if you think about specifically any kind of building project in the United States, right? There's a specification behind that. That's the written basis, legal basis of design. And in years past, that usually would be a seasoned architect that would write that specification, for a building end to end. Well, in today's age, there's not as many seasoned architects with 30 or 40 years of experience. And so it's getting farmed out to a lot of more junior architects that have less experience. Well, being able to search master spec, which is the content we create for the AIA, and having DELA look at that specification content and saying, okay, this is the products that you could use in this particular type of building. These are the difference. And oh, by the way, these are the products that are more green than other products. So you can have a more responsible like specification of different building products that would go into a building. That knowledge that we have for 50 years of architects and engineers writing that content is now at the fingertips of an architect that might only have 2 years of experience. And so that's a game changer when it comes to the future of how buildings are built in the U.S.
Yeah, and I mean, helping that less senior person do a much higher level task, but also then educating them as they go, because you're accelerating their
That's right.
experience greatly by helping them do these types of more advanced activities. So yeah, that's amazing. Well, so all of these things are great, and I'm excited across all of these different use cases. But let's get back to the other part of it, because there's always a bit of okay, but I mean, what do you see as challenges for using AI in a project-based business, and then how do they overcome those?
Yep. So I think there's still general kind of fear of job loss, right? I mean, and people think that some rogue AI is going to take over their job like tomorrow, and so there's a lot of education that needs to be done. And so what we found is when we can give people these more practical use cases, like being able to enter in time just by chatting with our Teams bot, and not having to go into any UI, and giving them a kind of a cheat sheet of these simple things they can use it for. That kind of breaks down the barrier. At our conference, we actually had Dell on display for some of our core products where people could just go walk up and use it, and we provided them with some of this cheat sheet of things to do. And what we found was that skepticism at first, right? Is this really going to work? Is this just a glorified Alexa? And then they went through the use cases, and they were like, okay, well now I can see how this adds value. To then, hey, do we have this? And yes, you do if you're in our cloud already. And how do I activate it? And then they would get out their laptops and start using it. And so I think that a little bit of that hand holding up front by vendors like us that can say these are the practical use cases, get people started, and then they can start to really explore what can this do for me. So that, to me, that breaks through the fear barrier a little bit and the adoption barrier, because we're leading the witness a bit rather than just giving them a blank sheet of paper and saying, hey, there's this great Gen AI tool, figure out how to use it. And then I think that getting to some of the senior leaders in these companies and understand what is the business value of this, right? And so that they can drive it from the top down as we're trying to drive it from the bottom up. I think the other thing that we're doing is we're trying to meet our end users in their moment of need. And so we're giving DELA access to training documentation, our knowledge base articles, material like that, so that they can use that as their assistant to say, how do I do something in the application? And so, and we're exposing using some of our tools, what we call kind of in-app engagements, where something will pop up and everybody's kind of seen this in their application and say, hey, would you like to know more about how this use case is done? And we're doing that with DELA too, so that they can see, okay, this is, it's walking them through how they could potentially use it. And then they could use it on the fly and find out that, oh, well, this can actually help me use the product too and be more efficient. And so I think, for us, it's like over communication on some of these simpler ways to engage and use it so that we can get over that fear barrier and people can understand this isn't replacing them, it's augmenting their ability. And I think that's how a lot of vendors are looking at it. It's not necessarily a replacement. It's an augmentation, and you're going to be able to be more valuable to the company if you can really learn how to use this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, years ago when I was at PeopleSoft, which I guess that dates me a little bit, but nonetheless, we did this analysis because we were trying to figure out which was more effective, the training and the training materials we produced, or the in-app help that we produced. And what we learned was that while training's great, you don't retain the massive amount of training that we often give people very long, right? But if you were doing things, the things you do regularly, you learn how to do them because you do them regularly, so you have to. But the things you don't do regularly, those are really the problem. And if you have, an assistant that could actually help me figure out how to do this specific thing that I've only done once in the last 5 years, I mean, that's a tremendous advantage, because now I don't have to try to figure out and spend all that time looking for back through my training books or my help or calling somebody or whatever it would have to be, right? I mean, that's a huge use case for them, I would think.
Yeah, and think about, the newer generations, right? They're not calling someone up like you or I might. They're texting them or
They're
sending them a
texting them,
message,
yeah.
or honestly, feeling like they hit a wall and doing something else, right? And
Yeah.
so the ability to have their personal digital assistant there that has all the knowledge that we've put into decades of training materials and how to use and how to's, that they can have a conversation with, that can step by step walk them through something, that can suggest things they might not know or context when they're doing a particular operation, and they don't have to go talk to another human. I think that's really going to be adopted well by the
Yeah.
Gen Zs and a lot of the millennials out there. And so I totally agree with you. Having all that information at their fingertips in their moment of need, so that they can, and if they want to go on a training journey, right, to get to our content right through the applications, is definitely huge, and it's going to change the way that applications are adopted and how they're used.
Mm. And also you just getting your hands in, like you said, I love that because the more you use something, the more comfortable you get with it, and the more transparency around it, the more understanding you build, the more you trust it, so that you can move into more advanced automation scenarios that do require more trust as the human oversight or human in the loop or whatever we're using today for that. So that also seems like that's a big advantage.
Yeah, without a doubt. And to that end, right, as we try to tackle some of these more complicated processes, you think about like a month-end close for like any kind of company, and there are a number of processes that you have to do: reconciliation of your different subledgers. You have to, make decisions, right? If you have things that are sitting at a time that is sitting out there that hasn't been billed, right? Do you bill for it? Do you not bill for it? You do have to do bank reconciliation. You have to do cash reconciliation. So you have to do all these things
Right.
before you close your books. You have to look at trial balances and do analysis. And so we think that there's, not only, would DELA be there to help you understand how to do those things, but also can be there to say, hey, I can do the analysis for you, or I
Mm.
can actually do the task for you. And there is going to be this continuum of trust that needs to be built
Yeah.
to say, I just click button do, and then give me the report of what happened. And so we want to work with users and give them that kind of continuum of
Mm.
capability, so they
Yeah.
can, ask the assistant how to do it, or the assistant can show them what it would do, or it can do it for them. And so I think you're going to get varying degrees of that, especially when you talk about accountants. They want to see everything happen. They want to see how everything ticks and ties, and it's
Yep.
going to take a little bit of trust. But starting with the how to, the analysis, and the automation, that's, I think, the path that people are going to use to adopt it.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I just, running my small business and doing the financial pieces of it, because as you know, I'm not an accountant, not even close. And I really would dread the close. But now, once I discovered that I could literally push a button and have the reconciliation run and then just give me some exceptions, I I mean, that completely changed the workflow for the month. And I don't dread that nearly like I used to. So that part I definitely appreciate.
That's right. Yeah, and you got to build that trust. I think not being an accountant, you're inherently disposed to trusting it.
Well,
Versus
also,
an
and just not
accountant.
wanting to do it. That's but I mean, it has
Without
to
a
be
doubt.
done, right? Well,
That's right.
so we've gone through a lot of this, and we are getting close to the end of the episode. But I wanted to kind of focus on the business leaders, the business owners that are involved in the project based business world that you guys serve. What advice do you have for them? I mean, what should they be thinking about for this next year?
Yeah, I mean, so what I would say is that we're quickly, the future is today, almost, and it's as you know, this
Mm.
space is changing so rapidly. Enterprise software is changing so rapidly as a result of Gen AI and just AI in general, and so it's getting to the point where it's now going to be stakes. It's going to be expected.
Mm.
You think about Gen Z and millennials, especially the younger ones, they're going to just expect this capability to be there. They're going to expect to have automation assistance and to do more reviewing and analysis than some of the actual kind of mundane work. And so, the leaders need to understand that, right? Gen Z is quickly going to be the largest part of the workforce, and they're going to expect that their solutions have this capability, and that companies themselves have embraced a data strategy that allows for this automation around their businesses. And so they really need to be thinking about how are they building a compelling business, for those younger generations. And what I would say for them, if they're, older millennials or Gen Xers like me or boomers, right? I mean, it's time to kind of reskill, retool, and get on with the change, right? Of what the new normal is going to be. And what I would say is like that shouldn't be scary, because we've all had to do that many times, over our careers, right? And so this is kind of nothing new there, but the leadership really needs to embrace it and kind of lead from the front in this regard. And if they're not, they're going to be a less attractive place to work, and that's going to really hurt their business. And so we really have a lot of outreach, right, to the executive community to kind of talk through kind of the value. And I have roundtables with CFOs and CIOs of small and large businesses and CTOs, and we talk a lot about this. And they have some of those similar challenges, but they really need to embrace, and a lot of them have. But if they're not, it's really going to make it a challenge for them to hire somebody from Gen Z that's just used to having AI as part of their technology stack.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that is, I get what's the old Nike slogan, just do it.
Just
I mean,
do
I
it.
think that is, I think that is kind of where we are, right? I mean, we've gone
Yeah.
through the last couple of years, especially dramatic changes in what the capabilities are. And now we're kind of to the point where you really have to put these in production and start really using them for the benefit that you can get from them.
That's right. Right. And it's not,
Yeah.
and you're going to get some value out of software vendors like us, right? And we can help bring that value kind of lower in the market, and subsidize it in some way. But the business itself needs to embrace this, right? The ability to kind of adopt and stitch technologies together and understand your own data and how you're going to apply AI to it. I mean, you have to have that capability too. And so, yeah, it's just do it as a great kind of slogan here. I mean, we always talk about the hardest thing of anything new, the hardest part of anything new that you're going to do is just beginning. And by just beginning, you get kind of over the fear, and then you're into it, and then you can really accelerate and help everyone around you get it done. And so I totally agree with that. People just need to get started.
Yeah. I mean, hard to break those old habits. And I guess that's a part of it too, right? Well, Warren, thanks so much. I really appreciate you joining again and doing this episode, talking us through kind of what's happened over the last year and how much progress you guys have made. Before I let you go, though, the one thing that I like to ask every guest is, could you recommend somebody for the audience, a thought leader, an author, somebody that you think would really benefit them from taking a look at and following, learning more about, and reading, or whatever their medium would be?
Yeah, so we just had a gentleman by the name of Jason Dorsey, come to ProjectCon and talk to us in a couple different settings around kind of the different generational gaps and the different aspects of generations and how they work together. And I think as we talked about, some of that, in terms of AI adoption, I think his work is really, really instrumental in helping generations understand one another. And he has got a book out called The Economy, which kind of goes through Generation Z and how that's going to really change the economy. Really great read. What I would say is, like, you think about Gen Z is going to expect AI to work. Gen Xers were built things, and we're tech savvy. We understand how all these different technology pieces work together. But Gen Z just expect them to work. And so just having some of that base understanding, Jason, can really help people understand that so they can view these different aspects and characteristics of generations as the guidepost to really understand how to pull together a cohesive workforce.
Yeah, no, that's a great recommendation. I think that is one of the areas that I see a lot of companies struggle with is, taking your perspective and then understanding the other generational differences across your workforce. And as the workplace changes and, starts to transition to younger generations, and as my boomers, as we start to way age out of the workforce, it's important to really understand that. So that's a great recommendation. Thanks a lot, Warren. And really, again, thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of interesting conversations, and I think project-based business is definitely a good place to look at all the capabilities that we have. And it's exciting to see all these things come together.
Great. Well, thanks for having me, Mike. It's a pleasure to be here. Love being on your podcast.
Thank you. And that's the show for this week. Thank you all for joining us. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the show. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a review to help others find us. For more research on AI and other software, check out arionresearch.com. If you're an expert in AI, generative AI, or business automation, either as a provider or an end user, email your information to disambiguation@arionresearch.com. Don't forget to join us next week. Disambiguation is an Arion Research production. I'm Michael Fauscette, and this is the Disambiguation Podcast.